Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the PorscheCooled podcast, the podcast where we talk about all things Porsche. Steve and I have been recording offline, as they call it. Offline. I'm going to record offline. Haven't we, Steve? We've been chatting about the shit that has been going on this week.
No one wants to know what we talk about offline, mate.
Yeah. If we talked about the stuff offline, online, I don't think any of you guys would listen to us anymore.
It'd probably be amusing for like about 2 minutes, but yeah.
Yeah, Sorry, Steve. Yep.
I was just going to say, like, the trials and tribulations of some old man is really not something that people really want to kind of listen to, I don't think.
Don't be like that. Don't be like that. All right. I always forget this, and I'm going to do it because I know there's people who are coming to the podcast, as I keep saying, and starting at the latest episode. My name is Michael Barth. This is PorscheCooled Podcast, as we said before. Steve is on the other line. He is Zooming. Steve is the co-host of the PorscheCooled Podcast, coming in from Sydney, Australia.
Regular guest.
No, it's gone past that. We're up to 100 and... I don't even know what number this is. 118? It must be 118. This is episode 118 for those of you who are listening to this for the very first time. Yes, we have got to 118 episodes. Some of you probably listening going, what is this guy talking about? How did you get to 118 episodes? Anyway, welcome back to everyone that's been here before. This week has been a weird one. Not much has been going on, actually, Steve. I know we haven't really discussed what we're going to chat about today. I've had a bit of a stupid day again. As I always say, Tuesdays are always my day that I feel like, I don't know.
Work's ramping up for you, right?
Screaming, I think is what the word is. Huh?
Work's ramping up for you, and you're about to kind of get to a fairly crucial deadline, right?
I don't think we're going to meet the deadline, which is not going to make some people happy. But it's very stressful. It's very stressful. It's been very stressful for a few weeks. I don't really talk to anyone lately. I haven't really been talking to anyone.
Welcome to my world.
Yeah, it's weird. I haven't even been talking to people on guys in the UK like Ajmal Flatcap or Nick Classic Series or all the other guys, PJ or something. I don't really talk to many people by Instagram because at the moment I'm just so like full on. Saying that, I did 2 owner stories over the last week, Steve, which I'll get onto one at the moment. I did 2 owner stories because basically I had none left. Actually I had one. I kind of have one, but I'd like to mix it around a bit. So this week we have Mark on owner stories. Yep. I had a good chat with Mark. Mark's from the US. Mark's from North Carolina. I know you wouldn't have listened to it, and of course I forgot to send it to you, Steve. Sorry.
It's okay. I saw the pic.
I had a good chat with Mark. Mark, he's got a 997. He's got a 997.1 Carrera 4S Cabriolet. It's in Carmona red metallic, which I've never ever heard of that color before, Steve. He sent me the what is the thing from Porsche Club America Red where they have all the colors? He sent me that link through DM. Rainbow, whatever it's called, all the colors. I forget what it's called.
Okay, not seen it.
It's a color that was on the. It was on. I had a look at that the link that Mark sent me, and it's a color that was on the 911 from 04 to 10, so the 997. Yep. I think it was on Boxster's 04 to 08, and it was on Cayman's 06 or 07 to 08, and I think it said it was used on a race car. I thought it was Carmine Red, and it was just a different name for the States, but it's actually called Carmona Red Metallic. Pretty rare color.
Looks closer to Arena Red than Carmine Red, doesn't it?
That's what I was trying to think of in the podcast. I can never think of that color. It's that Arena Red, the famous color, right? Yeah, that's what I thought too. It looks very similar to Arena.
Yeah, but not quite as deep. Sort of not quite as wine coloured. I don't know. Arena Red, very polarizing. Like it was all the rage on 993s because it was the launch colour for the turbo, but I never really liked it.
I think all these colours, we've touched on this before, haven't we? But it's all these colours. They were not really loved colours. I mean, they're loved now, but they weren't really colours that people
at the time.
I don't think they were loved at the time, were they?
I don't really know. Like when I had a 993, yes, like it was, like a lot of people kind of quite liked it, sort of thing. And look, I know it's all very subjective, but it's just funny, like launch colors as a sort of little thing, like when manufacturers decide what kind of, sorry, my daughter's kind of going off in the background. When manufacturers decide, like shark blue is going to be the kind of color for a 992 GT3 or whatever. And I'm assuming people kind of follow because they have no imagination. So therefore they kind of go, hey, I really like the launch color. My 1M must be Valencia orange, or, my GT3 needs to be whatever.
See, but do you look at colors more now? I actually look at, I remember you said to me the 1M in that Valencia orange is a great color. And I always never liked it. I thought, But now when I look at things like BMWs, and even speaking with Bernard in Queensland, how he had that pale blue M3 competition, that color. I think some cars, like especially BMs, some of those launch colors they actually look quite good. Like I actually quite like. I saw an M3 competition the other day when I was near Greenwich again. I saw one on the street.
New one.
Yeah.
The Bucky Beaver teeth.
And I have to tell you, I don't, and it was a dark color. It was like a darker blue color, I think. I don't mind it on the dark colors. When you see the plate on it, I don't think that front grille, that polarizing front grille is as bad as what everyone says. But I think that these cars, they do really look good in like what Shimmy has in that really bright green. And I know a lot of people didn't like it in the comments. I read the comments, but I think these colors are better, like Valencia orange and that 1M, that pale blue that I can't remember the name of the color that Bernard had in his M3 competition. Don't you think? It just kind of suits the car, I think.
I go the other way on Beamers. Like, I don't really... The latest... I can't get over the looks of the latest one. Looks just kind of horrible to me. And I've seen, pictures of like a funny mint green one and sort of like very bright sort of Laguna Seca type blues on it and stuff like that. And it doesn't work for me. Like, that car is just so over the top. The last thing it needs is another shouty kind of color. But... like it's a subjective thing.
Let me just finish with Mark, and we'll come back to I want to say something else about the color thing, but let me just finish Mark's story because so Mark's on Owner Stories this week. If you haven't listened to it, give it a listen. Cabriolet Owner Stories, 997 Owner Stories, and 996 Stories. They really do get a lot of listeners. Like I just checked the stats before I came on of Mark's episode, and Mark, if you're listening, it's the highest downloads of. The last sort of 4 or 5 weeks. Yeah, cool. So it just shows you that, there's a lot of people out there who really love cabriolets. They love 997s. They love these cars. I think it's the color of the car. But the best thing about Mark's story, Steve, and Mark, I know will be listening to this, is that he decided, he borrowed a 300D from his brother-in-law, I think. His sister's husband, I think it was brother-in-law, on prom night, and he drove it to the prom. And then his friend had this 80s 911 Turbo. This was in the, obviously that period. I think Mark said he was 51. And then, messing around after the prom with those two cars, he said he was hooked. Pre-internet days, so he's looking at magazines. And then, it was about one day he decided he was going to get a 911 and he set a goal. I'm probably giving away the main part of the story, but he set a goal. And that goal was to set up a Porsche savings account in 1993. And in 1993, he put, whatever it was, 10, and some months he put 100, some people put 2, and he'd just keep topping up this account. He didn't dip into it. And this is the account that he bought his first 911 with a few months ago, beginning of the year. That's what I call, working to your goal, knowing what you want, waiting all that time, and now he's so happy. He's got this 911 Cabriolet 4S, Carrera 4S. I think the Cabriolets always look great in the 4S because of that width of the back. They do look so quite amazing when the roof's chopped off. And he couldn't be happier. So it's a really good. It's just a nice story. It's just a nice story.
I couldn't do it. I said it before. I couldn't wait that long. I don't operate like that.
That's because you have plenty of money.
No, I have plenty of debt.
Anyway, go and check out Mark's owner story, and you can follow him on. It's in the description of the podcast, and I've forgotten. It's 911 underscore Cab Dreams, I'm pretty sure, is his Instagram. But it's in the link. It's in the description of the podcast. So check that and go over to Mark's Instagram, give him a follow, and say hello. And now, because I've probably said it wrong, Steve, I have to check it because I really hate it when I do things.
Yeah, that's good.
And I'm doing what
I hadn't seen that color before though. Like I saw your Instagram post just promoting this latest chat, and I couldn't. Yeah, I was trying to work out what the color was, so it's quite interesting.
Yep. So it's an interesting. Like I said, I've never heard of it. 911 underscore cab underscore dream. So go and say hello to Mark, give him a follow, and have a look at his car while you're at it on his Instagram. Apple ratings and reviews, Steve. I'm just going to go through this quickly. To anyone that hasn't done it yet, if you're on Apple Podcasts and you're looking at Apple Podcasts, they got a rating feature, they got a review feature. You can either give us a star rating, or you can give us a star rating and you can leave a comment, a review. If you do that, it literally just gets us seen. It gets us pushed up on the charts, especially the US charts. The US charts, we're actually been in the top 60. I think the other day we were 49 in the US for automotive. So for Steve and I, that's pretty impressive. America is a big market. So if we're anywhere in the top 50 in the US for automotive, we are very happy. And that's because of, Steve, all the guys who have left the reviews. I think we have like 116 odd reviews now.
Oh, that's cool.
So that really helps us
cool.
out.
I didn't realize that Smoking Tire and Spike, you heard them sort of talking that they were basically number 1 and 2 or 2 and 3 effectively.
But that's dynamic though. That changes all the time. That
is it?
Yeah, because I'm not disputing it, and I'm sure when they looked at it, it was correct. I had a look at automotive all time the other day, and Spike was number 1, and Smoking Tire wasn't anywhere to be seen.
Spike's number 1, okay.
That was
that's the bit that's more surprising.
Well, that's in Automotive All-Time America. If you go to Chartable, for the listeners, if they're interested, there's a site called Chartable. You don't have to be logged in to see it. And you can literally just put in your podcast that you like, and it'll show you its ranking in Apple Podcast market. So it'll show you US, UK, Britain, Panama. So, it'll show you that, so you can check it out. But I noticed the other day when I was looking, not that I disputed what they were saying, but I looked at it and I could only find that the chart for automotive in US all time. I'm not sure if they were talking global or just US. And Spike was 1, but Smoking Tire wasn't in the list, which was very strange.
Right. What to me was the most impressive thing is not just the actual kind of number, it's more that you can tell that Spike and Zuckerman just sort of do it as a sort of side hobby kind of thing, like Matt Farah's doing it fully commercially and it's a proper kind of business, he's kind of trying to get all the sponsors and that sort of thing, where Spike, you kind of get the feeling that, cars are his interest and his passion and he could sort of semi-take it or leave it kind of thing. But,
now he's got the Netflix deal.
Seinfeld.
Yeah. Anyone that doesn't know about that, Spike Ferriston is doing a movie or series with Seinfeld on Netflix. So,
yeah.
How much is that worth, Steve? Millions.
Don't know. I didn't actually realize that he sort of was a writer on B-Movie as well.
He was the main writer.
Which is pretty cool. Yeah.
I didn't mind that movie, I think.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
I listened to, and I mentioned to you this in the DM, and I don't want to dwell on it too much. I can't remember the name of it. I listened to I've been looking through, I've run out of episodes to listen to because one new one a week, I run out of the few podcasts that I listen to. So I was looking back through Spike's catalog and I was listening to a few old ones. And the one that I really laughed a lot about was the one with Jerry Seinfeld and Spike and Zuckerman. And Seinfeld's talking about that auction where he was buying all the Porsche memorabilia, the one where he got the wedding album, the notorious wedding album that Seinfeld bought, which I think is the one with Hitler and Porsche at Porsche's wedding. Right? Yeah. Which they didn't really mention it, but that's the wedding album. I'm sure that's what they're talking about. But that auction and how Jerry Seinfeld bought all this stuff. But it was a good episode. And I didn't realize that Seinfeld had 3 912s. No wonder the price of 912s went up after that episode in 2018 or 2019.
He's got everything.
Yeah, so he had an Irish green one, which he had at the. I don't know if you heard this episode, Steve. He had an Irish green one, which apparently was like so sorted. And then I think he had a Aussie blue one. I mean, great colors. He's got an Aussie blue coupe, And then he's also got a soft window, I think, in soft window Targa, which was in a gold color. So he has 3.
He's a mad, because it sounds like he's fully into his old vintage Volkswagens as well. So it kind of does make sense that crosses into 912s and all that sort of stuff as well. But let's face it, he'd have like pretty much everything and anything. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I appreciate Volkswagens. I do appreciate the Beetle. I have driven one quite a bit a long time ago. And I'm not going to get into how, but I drove one quite a lot a long time ago before it was stolen and then returned. And also I had a friend at school that had a burgundy one, which we crashed. So I know what it's like to be in one when they crash. Not nice. But I don't know, Volkswagens are not... The Beetle is not really for me, even though I really appreciate how they look inside. Like I've seen some, and I know PJ has a really good one who's been on Owner Stories, and I think they look fantastic inside. But I don't think I'd ever buy one. Would you, Steve?
Yeah, I would, because it's sort of like, it really is the beginnings of a 911. Like a 911 is actually like an evolution of a Beetle, really. So when you kind of think about it in that regard, like the characteristics of it, and they're sort of still there. Like what makes a 911 is actually kind of inherent in a Beetle in terms of rear engine, the air-cooled kind of engine, even though it's not a 6. Like the basic shape is kind of there as well. I'm assuming like the build quality and the reliability, like all those really iconic DDB ads. Like in terms of the personality of the car, sort of just it actually still kind of follows through to the tone of voice that Porsche holds. So
right.
I quite like it.
When I first moved to Sydney, I drove one quite a lot, on and off, due to someone that I knew that had one.
Yep.
And I try to remember the experience. It was quite a while ago, right? So I try to remember the experience, and I remember it wasn't always great. I remember it used to break down, but I guess that was just because maybe it wasn't looked after. And that was always annoying in the centre of Sydney if it broke down. So I remember those sort of things. So maybe that's I'm a bit tainted by it. I don't know. I'm sure if you have a well sorted one, I guess, Steve, and it's all well sorted, I'm sure it's a lot of fun.
My grandfather had one. My uncle's got one. Marco's got many. I've not been in any of Marco's, and I know that he's very meticulous.
That's right. Marco's got them, hasn't he?
My uncle's one, I think I've driven it. He got that, I don't know. He's had a couple, but in the last sort of 10 years, I think I drove it once or twice, and he's kind of taken me for a ride in it. It's definitely an experience in this kind of day and age.
Yeah. I mean, they become very, very expensive. That's for sure.
Yeah, it's not really like, it's obviously kind of different to say like his 2002 Ti in terms of that for its time was a performance car. Now it's a slower shit, but you can kind of understand how it may have felt in its day. Like the Beetle was never like that, but then again, the defining thing of having like the engine in the back would be just so kind of different.
I guess when I was in high school in year 12 and people started driving, people were buying, guys that I hung out with or people in the school, and it was only a small school in Wyong. Most people had a Mini panel van, a Beetle, combi van, because it's a surf area. So the people had combi vans, combuses, as we used to call it. And then I think a few people might have had old Holdens. But in general, a lot of people had Minis, a lot of people had Volkswagens. I had an Escort, but that's what most people had. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, right.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But, it's weird with the Beetle. I mean, I like I said, I don't hate Beetles. For me, they're not the thing. But I always felt that way, a little bit that way with the 356, Steve. I was never... I never really... I appreciate the 356, and I don't hate the shape of the 356, but I always wanted the 911 shape, the older 911 shape, more than a 356.
Yeah, sure.
But after talking to people that have owned them and seeing more and more of them, I really do like the 356 now. I think if you had a Porsche collection, you have to have a 356 in the collection.
Yeah, I'm not as au fait with the kind of whole thing, but like purely from an aesthetic point of view, there's sort of like a purity in the shape and the design of it, which, you can't kind of deny. And then same thing, like I guess if you kind of just lump it all into the one thing, like the characteristics of engine in the back plus being air-cooled makes it so different from anything else. Like, even though I'm not into it, like if I heard one driving down the street, I could recognize it in an instant. Like you can pick.
Yeah. Well, that's what you said about the 912, right? Sounds like a Volkswagen, you said.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a slight variation then when you kind of start moving into flat 6 versus flat 4 kind of thing.
Yeah, true. No, I mean, there's so much out there. I mean, like you can't have everything. But the 356, I think what I like about the 356, I really like the front. I really appreciate the front of the 356. And I think the more and more you look at the 356, you really do see the DNA with the 911. Do you know what I mean? Like at first when you see a 356, you think it's so far removed. But then you see certain angles of it and it doesn't feel that far removed.
No, I don't think so, yeah. Not at all in terms of the basic kind of proportion and stuff. Like, yes, a Beetle and a 356 are a lot more blobby kind of thing, whereas the 911 shape kind of got more refined and a bit more sleek. But I'm assuming that's just, part of car design as you kind of go along as well. But not that I would know, but I'm assuming from a coach building sort of metalwork point of view, all those kind of rounded forms in both those cars were probably sort of pretty avant-garde for its time.
Yeah, absolutely. Last week we were talking about the touring, or the week before we were talking about the touring, and then I mentioned the comment about someone had said in comments on YouTube, on the YouTube channel of the video of the audio of the podcast, that there were only 18 tourings delivered to Australia.
This is 991.2s.
Yep. 991.2s, yeah. And Stephen, who's been on the podcast before, Owner Story, Stephen from Sydney. Hi, Stephen. He said that he believes there were over 50 991.2 GT3s delivered in Australia, wing and touring. But he said he believes it was more like 70. But he said it was wing and touring, Steve. So maybe that figure of 18 being about a third of 70.
Sounds about right.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, it surprises me. I don't know why, I just would have thought that the numbers of 991s would be higher than that. Because, like, you basically see a lot more on the street kind of thing. You see a lot more of them in ads and that type of thing. So I just thought that they would be more prevalent because, we were having a quick chat about this prior to recording, and we've got the 997 numbers in front of me. So like a Gen 2...
Oh, what were they?
A Gen 2 GT3 and RS, so GT3 and GT3 RS is 121 and the breakdown is 76. Standard GT3s, 45 RSs. So like it's not that sounds like it's fewer numbers than a GT3 potentially.
I find that that's all 997s or 0.1s? Is that 0.1s and 0.2s?
No, that was 0.2. So 0.2 versus 0.2.
I find that bizarre that the 997 point was 76 in 997.2 GT3. Is that what you said? 77?
76, just standard GT3s.
So the 997 outsold the 991.2.
Yeah, and I find that really hard to kind of believe because you just would have thought that they became so much more popular, they would have built more, all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Doesn't seem to kind of marry up, but I wouldn't know, no expert.
Let's see what happens. Maybe we'll get some more comments about that for next week. But that's just in Australia we're talking about. I wonder what it's like around the world, though, what the delivery numbers are. Whether the 997 outsold the 997.2 outsold the 991.2, or is it the other way around? Be interesting to know how it is in other markets as well, especially US and UK and European markets. But that's weird.
No idea. I just didn't think that a 991 GT3 would be that rare. I made a broad assumption that they probably sold maybe twice the amount of 997s or something like that.
But Steve, it's very rare to see a 991.2 manual come up. I know at the moment there's probably 3 online on car sales, which is the car site in Australia for everyone knows that we talk about this. But the 991.2, I think there's 3 manuals there, and that's probably the most you get in one time. And I think like all of these Porsches, all of these 911s, they're there and then they're gone. You know what I mean? Like I talked about this the other week, how the 911Rs were on there. I think there was 3 911Rs. Now they've gone. Yeah. I have spoken to a gentleman who bought one of those 911Rs in Australia, who I'm asked to come on to the podcast and have a chat with me. I don't know whether it's going to come. I probably shouldn't have mentioned it because it might not come through, but he seemed interested. So I reached out to him because I'd really like to hear the story about the 911R and how it is for him and why he bought it. I think it'd be a really good story. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe they are that rare, which makes you think once again, what's going to happen to the price, Steve?
Oh, well, they're already going ballistic. And I guess it just means that it either continues to go upwards, or like even if you kind of get in at a high price point, you're still not going to lose money. Not that it's always about value, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, and I think you can get one. You can get the 991.2 manual for about $360. I think there's one for $360. That's not with government charges, but $360, I think it is. I don't know what they were new. It's probably very close to the new price. They're probably about the same price, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so you're just getting your money back. So it's a free car, basically, if you bought it new. Let me talk about, as I said to you, Steve, you know that I'm not buying any books at the moment. I'm not buying any books because I don't want to have to carry them back to Australia. Except I bought one book this week. I bought that Lego book. And
it's cool.
I think that I'm going crazy because I didn't look properly at what I was buying. And what I thought it was and what it is completely different. I saw it on Hodinkee.
What did you think it was going to be?
Well, I saw it on Hodinkee, right?
Yep.
And I thought, oh, cool. This is a book with all the Lego Porsches that they've made and story behind them and something like that, right? Like how it came about. That's what I thought it was about the GT3 RS and then the R. I think there's only two. I mean, it couldn't have been a whole book about that.
There's only two pages in your book.
Just so all the listeners know, this is where my head is at the moment. Sorry. Yeah, exactly, Steve. This is where my head is at the moment. I can't think straight, right? I really can't think straight. So I bought it, and I didn't buy it from Hodinkee because they were going to charge me some ridiculous amount of shipping because it's, I guess, US based. So I bought it off Amazon UK. It came straight away. It was like, it's only 13 quid. I'd recommend it though. And it literally is, you can make... This guy's got an Instagram. I can't think of his name. Johan something. I can't remember his full name. He's got an Instagram account. He's basically worked out how to make these cars. Basically, he has the car. Like there's a GT3, there's the original 912, and then he has the picture of it. He has all the parts, and he has all the parts listed. So last night I went onto this site called Bricks or something in the UK, and you can start to put the parts in and just buy all the bricks. And you can actually buy it. So you have to buy all the separate bricks. But I said to Tasha... Tasha, I went through one page and then I thought, okay, that's cool, I'm done. And then I turned the page and there was 2 full pages on bricks. And I went, no way I'm going to go through this now. But when I've got time, I might actually do it. And then I posted it on Instagram last night. I don't know whether you saw it. And someone put a comment that they've made one already. And they said it's really, really cool and it's really good fun. So it probably doesn't cost that much because you're just buying these bricks and he's worked out which bricks can be used for what and to make the car.
I would have thought the author would, like if it's such a specific thing, I would have thought the author would pre-package kits so you could, you don't have to kind of go through the thing of kind of buying each individual brick, and he would have done it for you and marked it up.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you need you know how books used to come with CDs in the back? You need that so you can just copy and paste all the parts and stick them in. The fact that I got to type them in. Yep. But I think you'd enjoy it. Exactly. I think you should get it, Steve. It'd be great to make. It'd be great to make with the girls. You know, you can make it. It'd be good fun.
Yeah,
when they're a bit older.
They're not. I was about to say they'd probably try to eat a few things
after they
choke
when they're old enough that they can't swallow them and think they're candy.
Yeah, but I enjoyed making my orange GT3 RS. That was mad fun. Like I did that at the beginning of the pandemic. And we're still in it. But I said the same thing to you. Like, if you do go ahead and buy all those sorts of little parts and kind of piece it together, it's strangely soothing. It's a fun thing to do. I know you're a bit time poor though.
Yeah, no, I'm stupid. I didn't buy that GT3 RS. I found it on Amazon UK and it was £200, I think, or somewhere when I was in Bahrain, and I was going to buy it, and then I was like, how am I going to carry it? But this is when we thought we were traveling again. It was how am I going to carry it? But
you can still buy the white one. The white one's fairly cheap.
Yeah, I'm going to buy I'm going to buy the Targa one that I know a few of the listeners have bought. The latest one. Did you buy that one? The Targa or the Turbo?
I got no space, man.
No. So I want to buy that one, and I also want to buy the the race one, whatever that was, the 911 RSR. But your one I can't buy because your one has just become ridiculous. It's like so collectible
Yeah, it's
now.
weird. The only thing I'd have to say for people listening, if they're not, if they're thinking about it, is it takes up a lot of space. Like it comes in a pretty massive box. Like my mum bought it for me back, when it was kind of new, and I didn't build until last year or whatever it was. So it sat on the shelf for like quite some time, quite a few years. That box itself takes up heaps of space. But once you build the thing, it takes up a lot of space as well. So the reason why I haven't bought like, the RSR or like the new ones is that I just don't have space for it. So
wait till you move to your house and get it then.
I've got to buy a house first.
Yeah.
And then I won't be able to afford the stupid radio.
What happened with the Macan this week? Is it all good?
Yeah, I went to service, booked it in a couple of... Oh, I forgot to mention this to you.
I'll tell the listeners you have a Macan just in case they've forgotten.
My wife's got a Macan Turbo.
Macan. Is it Macan or Macan? I always say it wrong.
I don't know, whatever. I'm an Australian, I say things wrong. So Autohaus are really busy, mate. Like I think Chris said to me they were almost fully booked up until August, so you probably need to kind of...
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll book him in. I better book in then.
Yeah. So it went in for its annual kind of service. It was a minor one. Strangely, my uncle messaged me last night and sort of said, I don't understand why you get your car serviced every year.
Isn't that what you're supposed to do?
Yeah, because I think the difference, and I sort of replied sort of indirectly to him and sort of said, it's because like this car obviously racks up the miles. I don't know what sort of normal mileage is, but where we live, going to see my parents, for example, is a decent kind of distance. So,
how many miles do you have on it now, Steve?
It's got 60 something, I think low 60s.
Oh, it's still quite low. 62. What did you buy it at? I thought you bought it at 60, 50.
No, it had 30 something, I think.
Oh, wow. It's nothing.
Yeah, but you know what I've done, like we've had it for 2 and a bit years, so we've probably done about 12,000 K a year. This is kilometres, not miles for international listeners, which is still like a reasonable amount. Anyway, it's because my uncle's kind of got 20 cars, so I bet he had the mileage on each of his cars, even the ones that he drives more regularly,
Well,
he'd probably do less than 5, so...
Yeah, it's interesting, the service thing, isn't it? Because I did an owner stories with Jeremy, who's in the UK, and he's got a 992. He's coming up this week, actually. Yeah, this week. Yep. He's got a 992 Carrera, and the service interval on that, he hasn't had the first service. It's like 2 years. New Porsches are 2 years.
Is it? It's every 2 years now, is it?
Yeah, it's 2 years.
Or
I'm pretty sure that's what he
miles?
said. Maybe it's a mileage thing too, but if you don't do the miles, it's 2 years, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think he's intended on taking it for a bit of a long drive, and he was going to take it in anyway. But I think it is 2 years.
Yeah, look, again, sort of dating myself, but pretty much every car that I've owned has always been annually, and every 7.5 to 10 to then it kind of stretched to maybe 15,000 kilometers a year. But it's, supposed to be an annual thing. And I guess it's supposed to be because it's mainly your engine oil, isn't it? It's your fluids.
It's mainly the oil, isn't it? Yeah. Some people change their oil twice a year, don't they?
Yeah.
I don't know. I shouldn't talk about servicing anymore because people get annoyed with me that I just keep going on and on about servicing and not knowing what to do. So I should stop.
No, that's all cool. So the Macan, it was just a minor service, blah, blah, blah. Everything was completely fine. There's nothing that interesting or uninteresting to kind of...
That's good. At least there's no more extra costs. That's the main thing. What was the thing you said you saw Autohaus's new showroom? You mean the storage area or car showroom?
No, they moved the car showroom. So when they moved to their current premises, the workshop, so they were in DY, they moved to Chatswood to a much bigger sort of workshop space. At that time, they didn't have enough space to kind of move the sales showroom along with it. So that was actually in a different location, which I never saw firsthand. They've moved that onto like next door to the kind of workshop now. So you would have seen it on Instagram. That setup is basically kind of connected now to the workshop, and they put in a fancy new kind of car wash bay and all that sort of stuff as well.
Is that where the storage is? Is that where the Porsche storage is too?
Yes.
Okay. I think I might have to do something about that. I've got to work out what I'm doing.
Yeah, so it's a reasonable space. Looks good. Like I know Scott quite well, who's like, one of the partners in the sort of sales division. And he seems very happy with the kind of new space. And I'm sure for him it's a lot easier kind of being next door.
It makes sense that they're next door to it though, doesn't it? That was some detailer or something next door, wasn't it? I remember that. It's quite a big space. Hey, what was the RS that you saw?
Yeah, funny, I didn't notice it. I was talking to Chris Monk, who is the sort of main guy at the front desk. Cool, very cool dude. We just got chatting. I think it's lockdown in Sydney at the moment. So I think for me, like I haven't seen like another person in quite a bit. Like this is my only trip in the last 2 weeks. And yes, it's an essential service, so it's okay. But I wound up kind of having
How's that an essential service?
Oh, it is. Like, well, see, like they're allowed to operate. Yeah,
really?
They're allowed to operate. Yeah. Otherwise,
they're
obviously, wouldn't have done
okay. Essentials. I guess you need your car, right? So.
Yeah. So I wound up talking to Chris, and I think we were just talking about cars in general, and we sort of wound up talking about values of Porsches as you do, which I get very sort of sick of talking about. But then he kind of said, "Oh yeah, like that thing over there is worth $2.5 million." And like it was parked right outside the front desk, and then I had a look, and it's like, oh shit, it was an orange 73 RS lightweight,
$2.5 million Australian dollars.
Yeah.
So who owns that car? Is it some collector?
I have no idea. I mean, like I know that our 73 RS is obviously a very rare car, but like you do see them in Sydney, and I have seen RSs in the Autohaus. That ilk of car in the Autohaus workshop before. So even though we are...
Was it getting a service?
Don't know, didn't ask. Looked really cool. That 959S was also in the sales area as well. So
yeah, you saw the one I sent you, right? The one at Scuderia Graziani. Oh,
the slant nose? The
slant nose one.
Yeah, what was that, a 930 slant nose?
Yeah, that was expensive, huh? What was it, 900 is a lot of money.
Yeah, almost $1 million.
Yeah, $1 million Australian dollars for a slant nose. I sent it to Steve. It's at Scuderia Graziani where I bought my 911 from. He's getting some good cars in there, actually. He's got some reasonably good Porsches in recently.
Yeah, because he knows, obviously, collectors.
He knows all the collectors.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this. I was thinking about this because of the owner story, Steve. And like, we're up to... this week's 41 owners, number 41, yeah. And I think I've recorded up to 43. I've got the two coming up, Jeremy and Daniel from Brisbane, who I spoke to a couple of mornings ago. Daniel's got a 944, which was an interesting one too. Daniel, I've been speaking to Daniel for a while, and I just kept forgetting to get him on, and he just sort of reminded me. People give me a bit of a nudge, and I remember again. So that's a good one coming up as well. So... But I was thinking about this after all the owner stories, Steve. I'm rambling. That, it's like a common thread is that you don't have a 911 or you don't have a Porsche, or you're struggling to get one, or you get one reasonably quickly, whether you buy a new one. Some people have got more money than others. But the common thread is once you have one, people realize that really there is no other car in there. There's no other car like it. Do you know what I mean? Now,
definitely. Yeah.
I don't know if that necessarily means they wouldn't have another car in their collection, because, as you know, David from New Zealand had a Ferrari. Other people have BMW, old vintage classic BMWs. But when it comes to the driving experience and the way that Porsche makes you feel, the way the 911 makes you feel, there really is no other car like it. And you would agree with that, right?
Yeah, of course. Wouldn't be on this podcast if I didn't sort of necessarily think that.
But what do you think it is, though? This is what I'm trying to work out, because I've spoken to so many people now, and you've listened to a lot of them. And we're like that too. And I've said it way back, like you were trying to get me into a 911 for so long, and I just messed around and just kicked tires. The same as you're trying to get me into a GT3 now. But then once I had it, and you said once you get and once you said this to me, and I remember this so clearly. Once you get a 911, mate, you won't look at these other cars.
Yes,
you know what I mean. And it's true.
And it's dead set true. It is dead set
look
true.
at the other cars.
I see the point that you're making because, like now I'd turn it to my cousin that recently bought the F80 M3. I believe he's never driven a 911. I think he would have sat in like my uncle's. I know I've never driven him around in any of mine. So same side of the family kind of thing, obviously. He's a mad rev head, like loves his kind of GTIs and Golf Rs and all of that sort of stuff. He's had a couple of those. He's had a Macan RS or something like that. He's had like a 135 BMW. So he's kind of done his whole kind of performance car thing that's sort of, like sensible, like not kind of crazy, outlandish kind of budgets, blah, blah, blah. And like everybody in my sort of car side of the family think that he's mad and he really should get himself into a 911 because it'll stop the itch. And that's the way that it worked for me. Like obviously when I was younger, I bought similar ilks of cars, even though I'm older than him.
Yeah.
But once you get into your 911, you just don't look back. Like the itch literally does kind of stop. For sure, it's a different sort of itch because then you're kind of 911 obsessed and you start kind of looking at ways of tinkering with it, or you look at other 911s and everything. But, like this cousin of mine, Joseph, like I think he turns over a new car every year or two. He's, like I don't know how old he is now, maybe 40.
Right.
But yeah, so what is it that kind of, what is it that makes you feel that way, or what is it about the experience? I don't know, very, very hard to describe.
Once you buy a Porsche, there is no other car. And let me just interrupt about the BMW thing. The BMW thing is like we've talked about this, I don't know whether it's correlation, I guess. This thing with the BMW that a lot of Porsche people have had BMWs or been in BMWs. And I know I've had a few people on Owner Stories who have told me this, where they've gone to an M3, they've gone to a BM. And then, it's a great car. They enjoy the car. They enjoy it because they need the convenience of a sports sedan, like we were talking about last week, Steve. But then they can't wait to get back into into a Porsche again, especially if they've had a Porsche, they've sold it, they've gone into BMW, and they go, I really do miss the Porsche. You know what I mean? And
yes,
it is that thing, and
but if you haven't, like my cousin, if you're a BM head and you've never owned the 911, then again, you don't really know what you're missing out on, in my opinion, which is exactly the kind of shoes that my cousin sits in, or kind of go a different way about it too. Like think about my uncle, he's 70 something now, again, mad rev head, blah, blah, blah. But he switched to a Ferrari. He went to the F430 a couple of years ago. He'd owned 3 or 4 911s. Then in his words, I think he kind of said, he's done the 911. He'd love to kind of give a Ferrari a go and really see what it's like. He owned his F430 for, I don't know how long, maybe 4 or 5 years maybe. But he went back to a 911. And I always wondered whether or not he would, if he would kind of go back. And like, to be honest, I sort of thought maybe he might kind of have his F430 and then he would get a 911 to go alongside it. But he didn't do that. He actually sold the F430 and went back to a 911.
It surprised me that he sold the 430, but it didn't surprise me when you told me that it was the attention of that car is a little bit too much. The attention that you get, isn't that what you said to me? The attention that you used to get in that car when you go, when people said, I've heard people say this online before on YouTube, and I'm sure a lot of other listeners have as well. You stop at a gas station or you stop in the street and people, the attention that the car gets.
Talk to you about it.
Yeah, and people who
his car
aren't
was black,
and his was black. It wasn't red. Yeah, and people who are
it was black and it wasn't modified, so it was wasn't kind of crazy, Larry, loud or anything like that. Nothing
standard,
nothing
right?
kind of non-standard about it. Yeah,
yeah, and it's kind of like we go back to that thing where Porsches are flashy and Porsches are why only wankers drive Porsches or whatever, that old 80s like thing or whatever that thing was, stockbrokers and whatever, and Porsches are flashy. And you realize that Porsches aren't flashy. They really aren't that flashy.
Well, yeah, they're flashy compared to
I don't think they are. When you compare, when you compare it to a Ferrari or a Lamborghini, they're not flashy, are they?
Yeah, but arguably they're also not really the same bracket as a Lambo or a Ferrari. You're talking another rung up kind of thing, which is kind of my point in terms of raising what my uncle's experienced, because I kind of go, I actually pondered whether or not, like, if you kind of moved on from a 911, like, say, for example, if I sold my 911, like, it would be very begrudgingly because I needed the money. And I'd always obviously want to kind of get back into it. But it wouldn't be because I could step into a hire car, because I'm never going to have that earning capacity.
No.
That I can kind of understand, like when you kind of go, well, there's nothing like a 911, you'd always want to get back in.
Yeah.
With somebody like my uncle, where he had the ability to kind of, inverted commas, upgrade from a 911 to a Ferrari, I sort of wondered whether you go, oh, okay, so now that you've kind of had a 911, you've moved on, and you've literally moved on, would you ever look back? Because would you just go, oh, now that you've reached a Ferrari, like a 911 is just like, meh, a 911 is a 911, and, now you're in a Ferrari or in a better ilk of car, but, he went back.
And I'm not hating on Ferrari here, because I like Ferrari, right? But I'm just saying that the attention you get, and I'm guessing I'm talking about, I guess it's not just the modern ones and newer ones, and modern as in saying, 10 years old or whatever. It's also, I like the classic Ferraris. I do like the 328 GTS. I haven't, I've said it on the podcast before. I really like the GT4 Dino, like David's got in New Zealand. 328 GTS, like Paul's got in New Zealand. Stuart that I spoke to in last week's Owner's Stories, his dream is to get a Testarossa from the US that's not so expensive. So there's, people who have, we have Porsches, we like Ferraris as well. It's just that I just think as a rounded experience, as a car that isn't as, I don't know if the word is flashy. In my head, Steve, I see a piece of furniture, and I see a more simplistic, a simple design chair. I see something, that is, if you know what you're looking at, you can see it, and it's not necessarily in your face. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I know what you're saying.
It's like a Privé. It's like a Privé, Jean Privé, a Privé chair, or a, even a Corbusier chair or something like that. It's not like a Philippe Stark chair. You know what I mean? It's not like, it doesn't have to be in your face.
But I would argue, I think I know the analogy that you're kind of drawing, but I reckon times have changed. Like since I kind of first got into it, like, 20 odd years ago kind of thing, they weren't as popular. Not everybody kind of, not necessarily had one, but sort of, I think most people kind of could recognize one, but they wouldn't necessarily have the same appreciation for it. Like the brand is a lot more prevalent, and they are like more common now. So are they flashier than they kind of used to be? I reckon they kind of are.
The new ones,
actually, I reckon they kind of
the
are.
new GT3.
Yeah. And the brand, like, like I sort of feel like, 20 years ago, like it really was a sort of proper, like an enthusiast sort of brand. And you really, really just had to kind of be in cars to kind of go anywhere near one. These days, it still meets that market, but it also now meets like a sort of status kind of thing. Like it's almost like, there's a lady that lives in this building, the apartment block that I live in, sort of slightly weird analogy, but anytime I get in the lift with her, she's wearing every brand name known to man. Like there's a Prada handbag, there's like big chunky, whatever they are, like sneakers and all that sort of stuff. You can smell the Chanel 5, blah, blah, blah. And then every day you kind of
You've
walk
got a
down to
good
the
nose,
garage,
mate.
She hops into her C43, her black C43 AMG. And it's that type of person that I reckon now kind of would get into a Porsche, which wouldn't have necessarily happened like 20 years ago.
Okay.
And that's sort of what I mean about the kind of flashiness. Like you buy it because it is, like
it's popular.
It's it's become more of a brand thing now.
Yeah, people are attracted by what a lot of people
Yeah.
are buying. People are attracted by what the top tier is buying, right? It flows down. It flows down the pyramid.
Yep.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. There's not a lot to talk about, but it's just like I just heard that the other day. Once you buy a Porsche, there is no other car. And I thought it was we know it, and I know it always comes up with owner stories, but it's one of those things which is really hard to explain why. You know what I mean? And it's almost like that thing. It's almost like that thing, Steve, sorry for 1 second. It's almost like that thing when we talk about how people, you get that Porsche, your first one, and then, the next night or the next morning, you're online again looking for what else you can find. Can I get a second one?
Yeah.
Or can I get some, and you keep looking. It's not like you stop looking once you have one. It's like, it's this thing where it's like you got to feed it. You know what I mean? And do all cars do that? I didn't do that when I bought my Audi. I didn't look for other Audis. I didn't keep looking for Audis.
Yeah, look, it sounds terribly snooty. I can say it because this is a Porsche kind of podcast, but like
snobby.
Well, so when I had, my 993 or 964, I was working in advertising agencies. I worked on a lot of car accounts. So I'd get to kind of drive some relatively kind of fun cars. I worked on the Jag account for, quite some time. So I got to drive
was that the
S-Type
E-Type
R.
Jag when the E-Type Jag was launched?
Yeah, back when Don Draper was my creative director. But so I used to get to kind of hop into client cars or go on drive days in a S-Type R or XJR and all of those sorts of things, like the kind of, supercharged V8s and stuff like that. I'd always loved cars so much. So if anybody wanted to kind of go car shopping, I'd always be the person that would kind of tag along. So, if I jumped into an M3 or whatever else, and the bit that I was going to say that sounds terribly snooty is that I jump into these cars and go, yeah, it sounds good or whatever else, but shit, I still prefer my old 911 compared to your new, Jag, whatever. And I still feel that way, obviously. I just kind of go, even though that new thing might sort of be a bit more luxurious, it might be more fashionable, it might be faster, it might sound not better because obviously, but if you kind of talk about a V8 or something like that.
Yeah.
But you just kind of go, yeah, I'm just not interested. I'm really just not interested. Anything that I would jump into just wouldn't be the same as in those days it was my 993 or my 964, and now it's obviously my 997.
We come back to that experience thing again, don't we? We come back to the speed versus experiencing too, though. It's I could go out, I could go back to Australia, I could sell my 911, I could buy the Mustang Mark 1 limited edition, for 80,000 Australian dollars, which is apparently a fantastic car. The looks of it aren't really my taste. I understand it. It's a muscle car. It's really fast, a lot faster than the 911. It's newer. It'll probably get a lot more appreciation in Australia than maybe even my 911. But it's not about, and I touched on this with Daniel in an owner stories coming up with his 944. He's just got the standard 944, right? And it's a bit like the 912. It's not about the speed. You know what I mean? It's about...
No, it's definitely not about speed.
With Porsche, it is definitely about that experience. And something about Porsche's history, and not just the 911, but just say the 911 more so, but it's something about the 911 and everything that's come before it, that when you drive one, no matter what generation it is something that you can't really put your finger on, Steve. You know what I mean? It's that feeling. And I used to tell you, when I used to come back to Sydney every 3 months, remember I used to tell you the first time I got in that car and I just drive it to get rid of the petrol. And it feels like the first time I've driven the car. And I remember I would sit in the car, and I think I did a video once on YouTube about it when I just got back and I was jet lagged and I just had to go out and drive. And it's it just makes you smile. It's like a pinch me moment every time when you've been away from the car from a few months and you're back in it. You know what I mean?
I kind of feel that's actually still the case. If you drive your car like me, I sort of try to maybe get in it once a week at the very least. If I drove it every day, I think some of that sort of specialness would kind of dissipate a little bit, but even once a week, you still kind of feel like that. It kind of sprung to mind. I keep talking about my uncle this podcast, but with regards to sort of like, I think he always used to sort of say to me, "Oh, son, like you need to kind of have more of a broader view. Like the world doesn't revolve around like Porsches and 911s." Because obviously, you know, he just sort of thought I became a massive fanboy. He obviously had a 911, but because he, in his particular position, he would then kind of go off and buy like a Mini GP, or he's got an Abarth like 500, and he's got quite a variety of cars, like different SUVs and stuff like that. And I kind of get the feeling that like when you're in the position that he is, or like, you know, go up the chain further, like to a Seinfeldy sort of Zuckerman type sphere or whatever, or Jay Leno, I think his point was like, yeah, of course, like a 911 is a brilliant car, and he wasn't sort of arguing that point at all. But he sort of said, like, once you start to kind of have an appreciation for cars and what they do, like they've kind of all got their own sort of merit and their own function, like, which was kind of interesting, because I think he was sort of saying to me, you know, like there is, you know, there are other cars apart from a 911, like an M3 is really good as well. It's just, yes, it's not a 911, but
yeah, I'm sure it's a great car.
It was an interesting point that he was making, but
yeah,
I think it's, for me, it's because, well, I'm not wealthy, so I can't really afford to have more than, you know, one or two cars kind of thing. So
yeah, and we are talking on that level. We're talking, you know, normal people like us that don't have a car collection. I'm guessing when you have a car collection, of course, everything changes, and you have a little bit of variety of each, and you know, you enjoy each one for what they're worth. It's interesting.
Yep.
How's your uncle though? How is he finding the 991.2? Because I know he had the 997 before, right? He loves it.
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't seen him a great deal. And just to kind of connect the dots, this is Marco's father-in-law. So he's married to my uncle's daughter.
Yes.
Yeah, like from what I can kind of gather, like as you sort of pointed out, he sold the F430 because his wife, my aunt, basically started to refuse to get in it, apparently, because it just drew too much attention. She just didn't enjoy kind of, you know, sort of feeling like people were kind of looking. So then he would wind up driving by himself, which wasn't much fun. Like, you know, he's kind of semi-retired, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, like it just meant that the use of the car became like a trip to Bunnings just to kind of, you know, by himself. Since he bought his 991.2, he's been polishing it and all of that sort of stuff. He's been driving in it. He's been kind of driving all over Sydney, albeit like not in lockdown at the moment. But, you know, he tells me that he kind of drives out to kind of Windsor and Richmond, and he's gone down south.
So it's more usable for it. He's getting the enjoyment out of it. He's getting the money's worth out of it, I guess.
Yeah, you know, him and my aunt kind of go and get like a takeaway sandwich. They kind of find a spot on the beach and they just go and park there, set up a blanket and eat something, and then wind up talking to some other old dude with a fancy car next to him. Yeah. So he's really like, yes, I think it just suits his purpose more, and the less flashy nature of it is probably what you were sort of saying has kind of worked to his advantage, but it's still, you know, like a proper enthusiast car. It still goes like stink, all of that sort of stuff. Like, you know, he has fun in the twisties. He has fun kind of, as he sort of says, like posing, because he knows that it's still like a, you know, it's an exclusive, you know, nice kind of car.
Yeah. Look, you know, don't get me wrong. You know, I still think what your uncle did buying the Ferrari, being his first Ferrari, right? He had never owned one before. He owned it for quite some time. It was actually probably more than 5 years, wasn't it? I remember when you told me. He obviously enjoyed it. It's still an experience he'll never forget.
Actually, he did, because he got it just before I got my car. So I've had mine 7 years.
Yeah, that's what I thought. He's had it. I vaguely remember when you told me he bought it.
Yep.
But the experience that he had with that car, like you still owned a Ferrari, you know what I mean? You still owned it, you've still experienced it. See, I still think...
He says he misses it. He still says that he misses it. But,
because it does feel a different sort of... And we're talking about multi-car collections here. Look, I think, you know, and I'm going to bring them both up again, and I know they listen to the podcast, but David from New Zealand and Paul from New Zealand, who are both friends. Paul is the president of the Porsche Club, or was the president. I'm guessing he still is. And I still think that, you know, David's collection is, for me... it's something that I really like. You know what I mean? I like his 911T Hot Rod. I like how he's got the SC. And he posted, thank you, David. He posted on his Instagram. You should check it out. He posted images of the interior after last week's podcast of the Pasha. He just told me he just picked up he was listening to that podcast when he just picking up his Porsche Spider. He bought a Spider. I think he said it was a 987 Spider he's bought.
Cool.
I think that, I'm not sure if that's for David's wife, but he said he bought one. I think he mentioned in the podcast he was looking for one, but I think he said he bought one.
Right.
And then, his Ferrari Dino. And I don't know why his Dino, his SC, and the 911T hot rod, it's kind of like a nice rounded, for me, it's like, I really like it. I like that collection. As do Paul, and I'm going to mention Paul with his, 328 GTS, and his 3.2 Carrera. You know what I mean? Like it's, oh, and his 997 GTS as well. I don't know. There's something I like about it.
They're all nice cars. I wouldn't be complaining.
Yeah, they're all nice cars. You know what I mean? And they're special. But I think it's interesting with the uncle. He experienced that Ferrari, and I wouldn't be surprised your uncle doesn't buy another Ferrari though. I was just going to say that he would possibly get another one. Maybe it's not going to be a convertible. Maybe it's going to be not as. I mean, the 812 Superfast or something like that. Maybe it's a different experience.
No, I should sort of explain. It's my uncle's mad. He's not wealthy. He's just like that enthusiastic about cars that he basically tips any spare dollars that he has into like these kind of cars. He's not like a super rich kind of, he's not a Viook of like a Zuckerman or half a Zuckerman or anything like that at all. So I don't think yes, he could probably sell everything and then kind of buy like a brand new Ferrari, but that's not his style. So
yeah, no, I'm talking second hand.
I don't think he would. I don't know for a fact, but I kind of get the feeling that he's sort of he's easing out of all of this sort of stuff, and I don't think that he'd be kind of getting himself into like a 458 or 488 or anything like that.
I watched. I might have mentioned this to you, Steve. I don't think I've mentioned it on the podcast. I watched an old video on YouTube with Seinfeld. I think it was at Amelia Island where he was doing a Q&A. And Spike was doing
Spike.
it.
Yep.
Yeah, there was two videos. They were both different. I'm not sure if they were different times or different times of the day or whatever. And someone asked him why he's never owned a Ferrari. Did you see that one? Mm-hmm. And what did he say? They scare me or something. He said, I think he's never actually. I don't think he said he's never owned a Ferrari. I think there was one that he said that appeals to him, but I think it's like one of the most expensive ones that you could buy or something.
Has he really never owned one? I bet you he does. I thought
he said he never owned one.
Yeah, I bet you he's got a lot of cars that he just doesn't sort of talk about. He's not like, sort of sounds like Zuckerman and Spike talk about his cars more than he actually kind of does. He's not doesn't strike me as the kind of person to tell the world about like what he's got kind of thing.
Yeah, true. I mean, that episode when the one I listened to, the old one, they were saying that, Jerry, you buy cars and you don't even drive them. You just leave them there. You haven't even driven them yet. That's when you know you've got too much money.
Yeah. That would be fun.
All right. What else, Steve? I think we might call it a day today. It's been a long day, so I think we might end the podcast. It's been an hour.
No sorry, my kids have been going off in the background, so it's quite hard to concentrate.
Someone said to me the other day they really like that. It's a really nice thing. I think it was Mark actually this week. I think Mark said it to me when maybe it was when we finished recording.
I can make a proper recording of it all and just turn it up.
I think pretty sure it was Mark. He said, it's nice to, hear Steve kids in the background. It's like relax, Once again, very nice, kind words about the podcast and how he's enjoyed it. And like a lot of people have been reaching out and saying, Steve. So,
yeah, cool. Nice.
Yeah. All right. Once you buy a Porsche, there is no other car. I'm guessing you guys listening to this podcast, Steve, all the guys listening to the podcast would agree. And I know a lot of them, a lot of the people I've spoken to have other cars. They have Volkswagens, they have BMW, 80s BMWs, or they've had them. They have Japanese cars. They have four-wheel drives, Range Rovers, but they're the sort of practical side of it. You know what I mean?
I can't imagine not owning. Like, I've sort of had this nightmare a lot where you kind of go,
tell everyone about that nightmare where you wake up and it's gone. Is that the nightmare?
Yeah, I think I've had that sort of nightmare where I think I owned my 993 and it's like, I've sold it. Like, at least when I sold my 993, I knew that, like that was with a view of getting a 997 kind of thing. But it really was a horrible kind of feeling to go, oh shit, like I've sold my 911. And like, I think the worst part of that, like just personally for me at the moment, like if I financially kind of sold my 911, I just know that I couldn't get back into it. and that would be even more horrifying.
No, you could
because they've gotten so expensive.
You could buy a 997 Carrera. Just get a standard Carrera like mine.
I could.
It wouldn't work though.
Anything disparaging?
It wouldn't work. Yeah, what does that mean? I don't know. I've missed the, what markets have I missed? I missed the market on the 996 GT3, when they were 90,000. I missed the market on the Turbo. I know Marco's got one, but I missed the market on those when they were a lot less than what Marco paid for it.
Yeah.
I've almost missed the market on the 912 unless I get a really beat up one and get it restored. There are some, actually, that's wrong. Actually, there are 912s out there. I've come across them.
Right.
It's, I don't know. There's no there's no 997 GT3s advertised anymore. All those 997 GT3s that were sitting there, all of a sudden people have bought them and they're gone.
I was going to say, because I think I know you were sort of pondering out loud maybe about a year ago when you were in Bahrain, and you sort of said it to me, it's like, I think maybe I should just kind of sell the 997 because it's just sort of sitting there, blah, blah, blah. And I'm pretty sure I said to you every single time you may have mentioned it, it was like, don't sell it. Like, if you don't need the money, even though you're not in the same country as your car, because once you get back to Sydney, like, you will really, really miss it and regret it. Like, you don't want to be 911-less. Unless...
No, I'm looking forward to it, but we never knew that this was going to go on for this long. Do you know what I mean? Like, we moved to Bahrain and we were going to go back to Sydney, a couple of times a year, and it wouldn't have been such a big deal. The fact that we haven't been back to Sydney since, January 2019 is now getting crazy. And to the listeners, if they don't know, Australia, as Steve has been saying, is in lockdown. Sydney's in lockdown for 2 weeks going into the third week.
Plus, they've halved their international intake for like anybody that wants to come home.
Yes, and we have a ticket booked, and Steve asked me if we're on business class, and unfortunately we're just on economy. But, this cap, for people that don't know, the cap in Australia, the Sydney Airport has this ridiculous cap of 450 people a day or something, Steve, isn't it? Some ridiculous...
Well, it's the government.
The government's put this limit on. But it used to be 50 people per plane, or something like 50 passengers per plane only, because that's the amount of people they can process through hotel quarantine. So the government, the Prime Minister, has now decided to halve that. It's just so... I have a funny feeling that our ticket in October, we're going to get bumped or something's going to happen.
I'm sort of not looking forward to that sort of moment. I got to say, part of it was under pressure from some immediate premiers from states, some other states as well.
Yeah, so. But anyway, that's what goes on.
Actually, just off that nightmare thing, because what I was trying to say was I reckon it's your... I know you were just pondering out loud, but I reckon it would be an absolute nightmare, and you really would feel sad and depressed if you actually kind of didn't have a 911 even from afar. But then flip that coin. I've actually had the best dream in the world. My most favorite dream in the world is where I sort of have this kind of strange dream where I basically I still own every car that I've ever had. So I never sold them. I just
maybe that's what you need to do. Maybe you need to get them back, because your white 964 is in Sydney. You know that we've seen it. We saw it at Cars and Coffee.
Yep.
You know what? I just want to tell the listeners. Years ago, Steve had his white 964 and he sold it, and I remember going on a run with Tasha, and we were near St. Mary's Cathedral. And at the time, your white 964 had just come up for sale again.
Right.
And I remember thinking, wow, that's 64 grand, that car was 64 or 65 grand, right? Mm-hmm. And I thought, God, that's a good price. And then I was in the back of my head, Steve was going, you don't want it, mate. It's got oil leaks. It leaks oil. It's no good. You remember you telling me this? I told you it was advertising. You said, it leaks oil. It's got, you don't want it, mate. Or something like that you said to me. I can't remember the exact words. And I remember this so clearly. I was thinking about 64. Could I get out of that and could I get that 64,000? Look at the prices now. 200K for a 964.
Yeah. It's mad. What's the world coming to? Getting old, mate.
Got to make more money. Go and make more money. I know you're working today, so I'm going to let you go. As other podcasts say, Steve's going to go and make his money.
Yep.
All right, mate. Thanks. I hope the listeners enjoyed that today. I hope it wasn't too wayward. We were a bit freestyling today, and we're just chatting amongst friends, which you guys are. Porsche friends. That's what it's all about on this podcast. Steve, see you next week.
Yeah, take care, mate. Have a good week.
All right. Thanks,
safe.
mate. You too.
See you then.
All right, everyone. That's Steve coming in from Sydney. My name is Michael Barth, and that's it for today. Thanks for listening, and bye for now.